2,000 to 3,000 from donations for transportation, and we also send out an appeal letter for our transportation services.
Okay, so are you saying if we cut $4,000, that number should drop?
Yes.
That revenue?
Yes.
So in reality, on our revenue sheets, if we cut that
I would say.
unless you raise your
And that's something
costs
that we're
by
gonna,
10%.
Yeah, we're gonna look at that, yeah.
So it's either you raising your costs to 10% to keep our revenue, to meet this revenue, or plus a cut, plus or we have to adjust our revenues.
Correct.
Right. Two adjustments.
Just a note, yep.
It's a good point.
Just a historical question. Your
Sure.
revenue in 16, 37,000, and you dropped your projection for this fiscal year to 21.5 and carrying it forward. What was the major contributor to that?
Because I took some of my programs and moved them into the special revenue fund. So the ones that were making, either breaking even or making monies, that I felt comfortable moving into something that I didn't necessarily have a safety net, have moved into the special revenue account.
Thank you.
I'd like to go back to the lunch program.
Okay.
Is TVCCA paying for any of the food? Are they paying for the food that's being served?
They're paying for the food that's being served in there, and I'm also now being much more aggressive about any supplies, getting it from them. I mean, in the past, it wasn't as, now if we need something for that program, then TVCCA is gonna provide it.
Okay. So, under Services to Community, 912, we are giving TVCCA $1,500. My recollection is that we've been giving them this much money for several years prior to 2016, which is what's shown in our budget. And yet, we are getting less service and still giving them the same amount of money. Now, do we get $1,500 worth of food from them?
Oh, God.
Well, but there are other, I mean, I would love to say that, Roseanne, but there are other services that TVCCA provides to the town that aren't necessarily connected to the senior center.
Okay.
Energy assistance, for example. People that I don't see, that I direct to TVCCA because I only process applications for disabled or older adults. There's a boatload of people that go to TVCCA for energy assistance. So, and I'm sure there's other programs that TVCCA does that's what's helping to pay for programs not related to the senior nutrition program.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Other questions? Kathy, great presentation tonight and a great review of your department. I really appreciate it. You know I'm sincere, right?
I do, Mark, but
I know.
you have your job, I have mine.
You're doing a great job. Hopefully I am too.
Thank you.
You have a good night.
Have a good night.
Department 139 is the Historic Properties. Luanne, my hero. Luanne is here tonight. How's everything going?
Well, I want to address this. I remember back in the 1970s when this town had one of the first commissions on aging in the state. And our first director was Virginia White.
Right.
And the Blue Goose. And I remember a budget hearing when our budget was cut and we brought in a room full of senior citizens and got our budget back.
I didn't recruit her to come, but thank you.
I sat there thinking, should I talk about it? I think, yeah, because our town was ahead of the curve in the 70s, seeing what was coming down the road. And I think what's being done by this department is remarkable. What they have done.
It sure is.
And I don't know where the Blue Goose ever ended up, but anyway. Okay, historic
I don't know what
property.
the Blue Goose is.
It was a big old bus painted pastel blue.
Oh, yes,
And
I
we
do
got
know
it
that.
used from someplace.
Yes.
I don't remember what.
That
but
goose.
It would go around town. It was amazing. Those were the beginnings of what we have
Yeah.
now as a professional going organization.
And
Okay.
it was historic and trend-setting then, and it still
Yes,
is.
yes.
It still
I think
is.
you should be very proud.
For sure. Are you at budget 139?
I
Are you
am.
coming in to
I am.
defend the
Yep.
$2,900?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
First of all, we need to say that this is the first year that our commission has shown up as an actual budget item. We have been under services to the community before, and when the commission was formed, it was not moved over. So this is, we can't speak to the point of whether we've been cut or added on to. It is probably the lowest priority of any budget item in the town budget. On the other hand, I do want to speak about the fact is that what it does, and I'll give a few examples of this, is provide an undertone for what this town stands for. And this is the fact that we have an amazing amount of historic properties. We have a history, and this is something that is probably part of some of the assets that we have when we come here and live here. Among the other assets that we always admire, like our school system and our Commission on Aging, Department of Aging and so on. But this is an important aspect also. So we will be presenting an annual report at the end of the fiscal year, but there are a few activities of special interest that I would like to present, and then some budget maneuvers I'd like to seek. This year, we put the Historic Properties Grant Resource List on the town website. And this was developed over a period of months, a year or two ago, and it is on the town website under Historic Properties Commission, and it lists all sorts of grants availability through whichever departments they are in the town. This goes through State Department of Historic Preservation, it goes to the Department of Agriculture, it goes to Economic Development. So that is available to anyone who wants to look and has an interest in raising money for historic sites. An organizational graphic is in process to clarify the relationships among and between the public accessed historic properties and their support organizations, because there's mass confusion as to how we all fit together. And so we will present that by June. We've had calls and letters this year from Amtrak. We've had contract inquiries about the cell tower when that was an issue in town. And we've had 5 private homeowners contact us. And all these were addressed by our commission. So these are things that are starting to filter in because we are a total historic properties commission. Another $19,000 grant was received from the State Historic Preservation Office, and this is for Phase 2 of the Samuel Smith archaeological dig and the architectural history of the house, and that will be done by June. The completion of public art from the Niantic Bridge is one of our projects. It is on hold. The parts are out on 4 Mile River Road, and the pieces are being preserved. They were saved from Amtrak when the bridge was disassembled, and the whole project is in limbo right now because of changed funding and personnel sources within the town. We thought we had a fix, and we don't. So we would like to have some kind of resolution about this project during this coming part of the year. Among our pieces in our document, we've developed them, so we are representative. We have the responsibility of speaking about the Lee House and keeping it by state statute. This commission was formed. And so we are responsible for the exterior of the Thomas Lee House and the property around it. We are also responsible for the exterior of the Samuel Smith House and its preservation and renovation. The programming, et cetera, for both of those. Now, you probably know the Thomas Lee House is privately owned by the Historic Society, and they have maintained it all these years with their private organization. The Samuel Smith House is owned by the town, as is the Smith Harris House. So these are, and I will speak to that in a moment. There is a project, though, the initial funds in our budget for a project to create and install historic property-related placards in the same format for those that are on the boardwalk has been cut in half. It was a part of an idea to go forward. And so we will not be spending all of our supply budget this year. And I have worked with other kinds of budgets, so I don't know how this works. But what I'm asking is there a way to take unspent money from supplies this year and move it to the placard project next year under contracts? And that I really don't know. From other organizations I've worked with, you cannot do that because it's got to go back to the general fund. So I'm thinking we probably will have $100 left this year. It'd be great to put it back, to pay back the $250 that was taken out of the $500. And that's a small amount, but I understand. I understand. Anyway, so that is the one concern I have about the budget as presented. Then, of course, there is the Samuel Smith building maintenance issue. When you write grants, it's very important to keep track of the volunteer hours. And this is the way that you many times receive matching money. And they have kept track of their hours. And again, remember, they're a new organization. They had 14,270 hours at the price of $23 an hour as prescribed by the people who do these things. So they have spent and brought in, they haven't spent, they've brought in basically income of $327,824 in volunteer hours. That's one organization. I should also say that I'm sure our town, if they kept track of all the volunteer hours, would have figures that would be stupendous. But for a group that's as small and new as a Samuel Smith House, this is an important kind of thing. They have been working their tails off. So knowing this, what we put in the request for the budget was $5,000, with the idea that they have been they get funds. They have some money set aside for the gutters. They have some money set aside for parts of the clapboards. They're doing things a little bit at a time. They have done some fundraising, which they will speak about. But this is to look at, all right, here is $5,000 to think about having another wall of the clapboards done. And especially, there is this issue. If there is a potential for a grant, we would need to have matching funds. So this is another thing to think about. Is there a process or procedure in the town systems for a group like this through the commission to come back if we say had the 1772 fund and said, yes, we will do this, but you have to have a match. And then to come back then to the town and say, can you help us match it? So this is another thing to think about. So those are my presentations for this, and now I'd like to see who is coming from Samuel Smith to speak. Okay, they have some budget figures to share with you. Any questions so far?
That's a good question. Any questions for Luann? Okay.
They have budget figures.
Betty's going to speak to the building maintenance line, I suppose.
Everybody a copy?
Thanks.
It's only
It was
Kevin.
mine.
So,
Yeah, we've known each other way too long, I think that.
Just watch yourself with the wire there, okay?
Yeah, you can, we'll pass it on.
Just.
Here.
There you go.
We're good, thanks.
Luann basically said what I had in mind was to let everybody know how much the volunteers have accomplished.
We want to make sure you're on camera.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And on the microphone.
I just need that. The volunteer hours, you can see from this the expenses we've had for this year and our income for this year, which is all fundraisers, basically. What we've got from the town in last year's budget that we're working in now, and our plans and what's hopefully will happen for in this coming year. I would just like to reiterate that I think we'd all like to move on, including you, that we all are in this Samuel Smith house together, and the town agreed to purchase it, and we need to move on because the town also purchased the Smith Harris house for, as Gary reminded me, $34,000, but they got 100 and some odd acres with that, for which they've not spent the money to put on the schools and stuff on it. The town gained out of that a lot of money. And the Samuel Smith house has a lot of acreage there that we could do something with if the town would help and get behind us a little bit. Not much, I mean, because you can see we've been functioning for the past 3 or 4 years. And that's all we've gotten is $2,500 from the town, other than help and stuff. The town highway has helped pick up stuff. And I would just like people to think about that a little bit and get a little bit of give and take here for, as Luann mentioned, matching grants and stuff, because we have been working on that. We do have fundraisers planned. We've got a concert at McCook's on July 29th. We've got the open house in June. It's this Connecticut State Open House. What else we got, Mark?
Cider,
Yeah, you're the,
Viking barbecue, we'll have a stop off in October, the green sale, and Bunker Hill Day, new this year.
so we are trying, we're doing as many fundraisers as we can. But we are under some constraints with our fundraisers for different reasons. But we do have McCook's for the concert on the 29th of July. So, that's
Great.
basically all I had to say, unless somebody has some
Any questions for
that we
Betty?
haven't covered.
Any questions?
No.
Questions? Any questions
With
you
the-
coming up to?
Ms. Murphy, with the $2,500 that is in the budget for building maintenance, will you be able to proceed with that project?
The one that's right in the budget that we're acting in.
The request?
The request was for 5,000.
Right, but it's reduced to 2,500.
Yes.
So with the 2,500, what will you be able to do?
Buy some cedar planking and stuff for the clapboards on the house.
The southeast corner, I think we could probably do just the east corner with $2,500. So it will delay the work for another year. So that was $4,500 was what it would cost to jack up the southeast corner and clapboard the side and the front of the house. The other side, the buttery, will be done this spring with money from last year's budget. And a lot of this will be with volunteer labor as well.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, yeah, we're not paying anybody to do anything. It's all volunteer
Yeah.
labor.
so the cost is cost of materials.
What's the more pressing issue, the clapboard or the foundation jacking?
Well, they're kind of going to go together because as the foundation is jacked up, the clapboards will shift and need to be replaced. A lot of them are rotted, that's why they need to be replaced anyway.
So you'll start with the jacking,
Yes.
Yep.
and the 2,500 will cover that? Or is that mostly labor and not a lot of materials?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, basically. Just with lolly columns and
Yeah.
push it to even it out. Because the front wall, we can't, until we jack it up and fix the front wall, you can't put new clapboards on it. That doesn't make any sense.
And if for some reason you did the jacking, you didn't have enough money to replace all the clapboard, how would you preserve it for a year? Would it just sit there, or would you have to temporarily cover it, or?
How-
I'm just worried, if you start the jacking and then you don't have enough money to replace damaged clapboard, you can end up causing more damage to the facility if you can't get it weather tight for waiting for another.
Well, it's not weather tight at the moment. It's
Okay.
very unweather tight. The
So
clapboards.
you'll deal with it the best you can.
We'll just have to.
All
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Thank you, folks. Any other questions? Smith Harris House. I saw
Gary had to leave.
I
He
saw
had
that
somebody-
Gary probably had a Lions Club meeting tonight, am I right? It's Wednesday night, so,
Well, Gary said he could only present if we did it by 5:45, so
Oh,
we
I
made
didn't know
sure
that.
we couldn't do it
Yeah,
before
Gary-
5:45.
We should have
Kind of
moved,
in charge of the
should
speaker
have
of the
moved the
Lions.
agenda.
yeah. Those,
He has me substituting.
those Lions, huh? So,
Yeah.
why don't you introduce yourself to the crew and,
Yeah. Well, I'm Dick MacDonald. I'm actually finance officer with the Smith Harris.
right.
So, wasn't through my own choice. I was told I had to be. All right.
another great
I'll try to be real brief. Excuse me, real
Yeah,
brief here.
yeah.
We gave our proposed budget for this next year, and we were cut from, we were reduced significantly. I'll give you a quick idea. The tour guides and recording secretaries were reduced by $600, building maintenance by $400, landscape maintenance by $240, and the programs was reduced by $1,000. It would have been nice if we had had that much as the money that we really needed here, and we had it cut out. The real problem is that first line, the reduction of the recording secretary and tour guides. The cost per hour of our recording secretary and tour guides went up, but we were reduced. So all I'm gonna do is I'm just going to ask for a restoration into our budget of $405 so we can fund our tour guides. We have the recording secretaries here, 12 meetings times 4 hours, and she gets a certain amount of money. Our tour guides are 13 weekends. Basically, we have 3-day weekends, we're open. 13 weekends at 8 hours, because the tour guide is working basically Saturday and Sunday. And she, again, her money, the tour guide's information, money has been increased. We are open on Fridays. Our director covers our Fridays. So that's taken care of. We cannot, it doesn't make any sense for this to be cut when the cost of these two individuals has been raised. So all we really want to ask is that we add $405 to this clerical and recording secretary, clerical and tour guides, so that we can afford to have the house open on these days. Because if we can't come up with the money to pay the tour guides in particular, we'll have to have some days in which we do not have a tour guide there. And the way our visitors come, it's very, very irregular. And we publicize when we're available, and we've got some wonderful responses. And we have a young lady who we used last year and was excellent, and she's willing to do it again this year, which is some real help. But the problem really is we need, in the budget, we need to be funded with at least another $405 to pay for the tour guides. So that's where we stand. Trying to keep the expenditures under 2.5% increase, and this would be basically no increase in our budget from the previous year. We can muddle around and we can get around, at least this year, the building maintenance, the landscape maintenance, and some of the programs. We can get by, I think. But the tour guides are really our problem. We won't have the money to pay the tour guide. So that's why we would like to have another $405
Right.
put into the budget.
Are there not volunteer tour guides in your group?
Initially, we were using volunteers.
Yeah.
The problem is the people we have to pay are basically, or let's say, the tour guides we were using were members of the commission. We have a problem with the commission, in that we've only got 6 members out of the 7 we should have.
Right.
And we've had a couple of comments from people we wanted to put on the commission they were concerned about a requirement to be a tour guide at some of these weekends. Remember, these are the summer weekends. We've got some very busy people on the commission, and generally what's come down is if the young lady who's been acting as our tour guide cannot make it, or if on Friday our director just cannot be there, somebody hopefully will fill in. I think last year we had only about 2 or 3 days in which we could not have anyone there because nobody was able to fill that spot. But
Yeah.
as you can imagine, we've got we get the town gets an awful lot out of some of these out of these people, and we are very fortunate, as I say, to have with the young lady we've got now, and but the cost of both of these, the hourly cost of both of them have gone up, and we have to be able to accommodate that.
Do they get paid, I just don't know. Are they a minimum wage and therefore minimum wage went up?
Our tour guide is
So-
minimum wage.
So this is a result of the minimum wage increase?
And the recording secretary is a
is
result
also-
of, yours
Yeah.
have increased her pay.
Are there any questions for Dick?
Line 415, curators going from 5 to 6, what's the 20% increase?
Pardon me?
There's a 20% increase in line 415 for curator?
Yeah.
What's the 20% increase?
Whoops.
So just 4 hours, raise, put more pay, what's
Yeah, the curator, we raised her, we really had to raise her pay also. Our curator is worth about double what we pay her.
More than that.
Well, the director.
More than that. Yeah,
She,
she's incredible.
she's got so much talent and so much knowledge in
Right.
here.
But she works part-time.
Oh, definitely.
Mhm. And so could you tell us how often she works?
She generally works 8 hours a week, except when we've got some program going on, is more hours. If we've got an activity involved, it's more hours. But basically, she when you average it out, she's going about 12 hours a week. She puts in more time than that when we really think about it. I know how active she has been. And we would love to have her have a lot more hours, but we're up against the budget.
Right. Thank you.
your utilities, are we 4,100, 16, we did 3,300? Hate asking you this question all the time, but where are we running on this one?
The electric?
Yeah, is that more than we need, and we could shuffle some money from that line item? Or do you expect 4,100, or are we always beating
I
that?
really expect 4,100.
And I would also like to add to that they are not meeting at the house any longer. They're meeting at the community center so that they don't have to heat the house, which is too bad because they're the Smith-Harris Commission.
Yeah,
It is.
And they can't even really afford to meet in the house that they're trying to maintain. So in the
Yeah,
wintertime.
heat is the interesting problem. Town, or somebody was extraordinarily intelligent when they put a heating system in when the town took over the house. Put electric heating in. Now, electric heating is usually expensive. However, with electric heating, you can heat one room at a time. And that house runs at 50 degrees in the winter, which is about as low as we can keep it. We run the house at 50 degrees. If there's an activity, we turn the heat on.